Mr. Raymond is an old ranger who has lived alone in a wildlife reserve in South Africa for 30 years. Without a wife, children, or relatives, he chose to live quietly in an old wooden house on the edge of the reserve. Every day, he patrols the forest, records animal tracks, and protects nature from poachers. Everyone in the station calls him the old man of the jungle, the one who can talk to wild animals with his eyes. In his heart, nature is not work, but home, a friend, a place where he belongs forever. One rainy day, while patrolling, he heard a faint roar coming from the bushes by the stream. He approached and discovered a young male lion lying curled up with a seriously injured leg. Its wound was swollen, festering, and swarming with flies, a sign that it had not been treated for many days. There were no footprints of its kind nearby, indicating that it had been chased away by the pack and left to die. The lion looked at him, its eyes tired, thirsty for life, but also full of despair and vigilance. He slowly sat down, took out a towel to wipe the sweat, and called out to it softly, as if talking to an old friend. He brought a small first aid kit, bent down close to it, and began cleaning its wound in the rainforest. The lion shuddered in pain, but did not react violently. It seemed to know that he was helping it survive. After giving it temporary first aid, he called the station to ask for an ambulance to come and provide emergency assistance. It was still raining. He did not leave but sat and covered it with the thick coat he was wearing. Hours passed. The rescue vehicle finally arrived. He and the station staff carried it onto a stretcher together. When they arrived at the rescue center, he named it Barrow, meaning the one chosen to live. Barrow was taken to the treatment room, where the veterinarian stitched up the wound and administered an emergency for. That night, he did not leave the room, wiping his sweat and whispering stories to Barrow. A silent, wordless bond began to develop between the old man and the abandoned wild animal. Barrow underwent successful treatment and was moved to a rehabilitation cage located right next to Mr. Raymond's wooden house. Every day, he brought food and medicine and spent hours sitting next to the cage, talking to it. Barrow was initially shy, hiding in the corner of the cage, but gradually began to come closer to him. He told it stories of the past, about the time he almost died of malaria and the eagle that used to follow him. Barrow listened, not speaking, but his eyes gradually lit up, his ears turned towards him as if understanding every word. When it was cold, he covered Barrow with a blanket. When it was hot, he placed a basin of cold water next to the cage for it to drink. One time, he had a fever and could not go to the barn for 2 days. Barrow rode all night, forcing the station to look for him. That friendship did not need language or training. It only needed a constant presence every day together. Barrow gradually became healthy. His fur smoothed again. His eyes were sharp, and his steps became more and more steady and strong. After 3 months, he was hunting small live prey in the training area, as if his instinct had returned. In the 4th month, he began to react quickly, learned how to stalk prey, and climb high rocks again. By the 5th month, the doctor concluded that Barrow was ready to return to the wild. Mr. Raymond was thoughtful for a while, sat next to Barrow for a long time, gently stroked his mane, and only said, "It's time." The next morning, the barn door was opened. Barrow walked out, turned to look at him, then disappeared into the deep forest. No one said anything, but everyone saw him standing for a long time, holding an old scarf that had been patched many times. 3 months later, as the sun rose, a familiar roar sounded outside the ranger station gate. Barrow returned, not going inside, just sitting quietly, looking at the familiar wooden house through the fence. Mr. Raymond went out, called its name. Barrow growled softly and lay down as if waiting. They looked at each other. No sound, no touching, and the eyes filled with thousands of stories. From then on, every few months, Barrow returned, always choosing a quiet morning and leaving before the sun was at its zenith. Barrow never broke the gate or tried to get in, just sat there watching, as if protecting something sacred. Mr. Raymond always kept some cooked meat ready, put on the fence, and stood quietly watching. Barrow did not rush, eating slowly, as if keeping the courtesy of a guest who had been a patient. This scene was repeated over and over again for many years, like a silent ritual between two old souls, a man and a beast, meeting on the border of life, death, wildness, and compassion. As the years passed, Mr. Raymond began to weaken. His health declined, and the doctor diagnosed him with terminal liver cancer. People offered to take him to the city for treatment, but he refused, only wanting to live out his last days in the wooden house. "I want to die in a place where I saved other lives, not a place with white walls and cold machines," he said. He cleaned the wooden house, folded the blankets and pillows, hung an old shirt on a hook as if preparing for a long trip. He didn't eat much anymore, just lay there, eyes looking out the window where the green forest began. Every morning, the people at the station knew that he was only waiting for one thing, to see Barrow one last time. One dry season morning, Barrow appeared at the conservation gate again, but this time roaring loudly, circling around as if he had lost his way. It roared 3 times, then lay down, its eyes never leaving the wooden door where Mr. Raymond had stepped out. A young ranger realized something was wrong, rushed back to the wooden house, and saw Mr. Raymond breathing heavily, eyes half closed. He called his teammates, immediately sent a stretcher to take him to the rescue center near the gate where Barrow was waiting. He was almost unconscious, but when he heard the roar, tears welled up in the corners of his eyes, and his lips moved. "Barrow is here." The hospital bed was pulled to the grassy area next to the fence where Barrow had been waiting for nearly an hour. Seeing him, Barrow growled softly, walked slowly to the fence, put his claws on the iron edge as if he wanted to touch him again. Mr. Raymond opened his eyes, reached out, and gently touched Barrow's claws through the gap in the fence. The whole station was silent. No one dared to interrupt that sacred moment between man and beast. He whispered with a broken breath, "Very good. You have lived, just as I expected." Barrow bowed his head, rubbed his forehead against the gap in the fence as if praying, his eyes never leaving him for a second. In the midst of the golden grass, clear sky, and gentle wind, Mr. Raymond breathed his last, his hands still touching his old friend. The rangers burst into tears. No one could hold back their tears before that friendship that transcended all boundaries. He was buried that same afternoon in a piece of grassland next to the small stream where Barrow had been saved years ago. The rustic tombstone was engraved with the words, "Mr. Raymond, keeper of the old forest, friend of the lion." A few months later, Barrow returned, this time not to the gate, but straight to the small grave in the middle of the meadow. It lay beside the grave for hours, its eyes half closed, the wind blowing through its golden mane as if whispering farewell. From then on, it returned several times a year, always until dusk covered the withered golden grass. No one called it a wild animal anymore, but the one who kept the last promise to the old man of the jungle. A friendship that needed no words, just a look, a wait, moved the entire reserve. What do you think of this story? Leave your thoughts in the comments section.